This episode of the Beef Market Update is brought to you by SmartLick Supplements. Weaning is hard. Calves are stressed, immune systems take a hit, and gains can drop fast. That's why we use SmartLick Stress 22 with Avela 4. It's a low moisture block built to support calves before, during, and after weaning. No guesswork, minimal labor, and science-backed nutrition they'll actually eat. Find out more at smartlick.com.
I'm Lindsay Smith with Real Agriculture, and joining me now, as she does very regularly here, it's Ann Wasko of the Gateway Livestock Exchange here for the Beef Market Update. Ann, how are you?
I am good, Lindsay. I'm good.
That's good. We don't get to do this often, so it's really lovely to get to chat with you. And, well, maybe I'm the bad news bearers, but are we still on a market tear, or did we see the seasonal sort of slowing of prices after the long weekend?
Well, the latter. So a couple of things. First of all, yes, right, you mentioned seasonally. Often after Labor Day, markets take a bit of a breather. The other thing I'd point out is, of course, we've just come off of placing all-time record highs, both in the U.S. and in Canada for fed cattle. So a little breather. Sometimes folks look at that as that's a healthy sign to take a breather. So I guess time will tell, but bottom line is we're talking a little bit earlier in the weeks than we normally do. So we're still waiting. There's bids in Kansas being passed of 240. That would be lower than last week. So the market is appearing like it's going to trade lower. Northern, like Nebraska type trade is 238. Again, a little earlier in the week than normal, but that would be $4 lower than last week. And the dressed prices in Nebraska, $375 delivered, and that would be $8 lower than last week. So we've still got some time to trade some more cattle, but all indications are that, especially with the big drop in the futures market we saw earlier this week, that cash trade is also off.
Okay, but as you mentioned, maybe not all bad. It's taking a breather. It's a bit seasonal, and we are still coming off of very strong prices. What have we seen for Western Canada, Eastern Canada, as far as pricing there?
So that market shows like it's holding steady this week, which is good because we've talked about that basis spread between Alberta and the U.S., and it's been extremely wide, even though it's been at high price levels. We've still got Canadian prices well back of the U.S. So some of this, us trading steady this week and the U.S. lower will help narrow that gap a little bit. So again, for what we've seen trade so far in Alberta this week, anywhere from 520 to 526 delivered. We're going to call that mostly steady. There's a little bit of live business that's been done at 318 to 320 FOB the feedlot, and that would be some activity in business where cattle be getting delivered into the U.S. And then Ontario also sounds like that was a steady fed cattle market this week at 542 delivered.
Okay. Now, I will say that certainly, it has been a good run. I think most cattle producers would say that, they're happy with where things have been. But I get a sense that there is a bit of there is uncertainty going forward, as always. What are you hearing as far as, in your travels, looking ahead a little bit as to what maybe the next few months may hold?
Well, I think, first of all, there's some seasonality to the market, so that's fair enough. I think we'll probably expect, for example, slaughter cow prices to come down into the fall run like they normally do, but they're still going to trade well above where they would normally trade at or have traded at in the past. So we're still looking at strong levels, but still expecting that seasonal pattern. One of the other things that and again, it's just the start of September, but there's been, and we've talked about this in previous calls, there's been certainly more cattle selling on the internet and video sales for fall delivery. And that's kind of maybe meant that business has been a little slower here in September of some of the folks that wanted to trade early, already done their business, still waiting to deliver the cattle, but have done their business. And so as a result, we're seeing some of the auction market volumes kind of slow to really pick up and get going. I know August volumes in Western Canada were certainly well off the mark. I think 18% down in volumes versus last year, but two very different years, with these absolutely crazy record high prices that we're seeing today.
Mm-hmm. Now, we do like to talk trade data when we have it, and we did get some numbers that rolled in late last week. What can you tell us on, we'll start with beef and then we can talk live cattle, but what do we have for beef numbers?
Yeah, I think it's always important, Lindsay, to talk about this trade data, especially from a Canadian perspective, because remember, half of our trade is in export, or half of our business of our beef production is export. So we talk about the record retail prices that we're seeing, and we worry about those levels. Sometimes I think, how long can they last? Is there, what are we doing? But remember, the other half of our consumer is outside of the country. So important to talk about this data. So we did just get StatCan released last week, the July beef export data. So in the month of July, we were up 10% from last year, which is a little bit different. It's only the second month this year to be higher than last year. We are running with smaller production, so you'd expect exports still to be smaller. So that's kind of good news. Year to date was still down 5% in our volume, but our value of our beef exports are up 6%. So again, a reminder that when we move products, especially to some of the Asian type markets, we're looking at record retail and wholesale prices, and that's certainly playing back into the value of our beef exports. So that's a good news story. Just to break it down, I think we were up 10% into the U.S. in July. We were up 15% into Japan and up 9% into Mexico. So it's not a one-horse wonder, if you will. I mean, all three of our key markets were up. And again, that's while our beef production in Canada is down 5%. So I think standing back from the big picture perspective, that's maybe data I wasn't really expecting to see.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about imports? Because, of course, that's exports.
Yeah. And we know we're short of import product, or we're short of lean trim product. And so we are importing more product that goes kind of hand in hand when you're at the phase of the cattle cycle. So our imports, and this is for August, so I'll just clarify, we're talking about one more month of data. Imports in August into Canada were up 5%, and every month this year has been up. So that's on trend. Year to date, we're sitting up 19%. And again, the big players year to date from the U.S. were down 3%, but the big increases are, of course, Australia, New Zealand. We've talked about that every month as well. Australia up 52%. And New Zealand up 46%.
Now, what about live cattle movement? This one always fascinates me. I'm always surprised.
Yeah, and it's interesting, especially here in 2025, because we exported so many cattle in that first quarter ahead of the tariff, rate announcement. That was an unknown that we were also worried about. So considering the numbers that went south in the first quarter of this year, things have really quieted down ever since. So our fed cattle exports in July were actually down 20%. Our cow exports are down 60% just for the month of July. And again, it's showing you that, first of all, our cow fodder is running low, and so their packers are certainly trying to keep everything they can for harvest in Canada. Feeder cattle exports bounced a little bit in July, but it's such a small number. Year to date, we're still running up 14%. And that all goes back to the big movement we saw back in the first quarter of this year.
Okay. That's 60%. Did that surprise you a little bit? That's a big number.
It did. But again, it's July and it's a small, we're not in most areas. I know we've got drought in a lot of areas still in Western Canada, but generally speaking, we didn't see a big run of cows to town, and that showed up in both our domestic slaughter as well as this export data.
Okay. All right. Fascinating numbers. Okay, Anne, thank you so much, of course, as always, bringing us the Beef Market Update. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you again in a few weeks.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay. Have a good weekend.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the Beef Market Update, brought to you by SmartLick Supplements. Don't let weaning wreck your fall gains. Go to smartlick.com and check out StressLick and Stress 22 with Avela 4. The formula's done, the results are proven. You just set it out and let it do the work.